Hey everyone, and welcome back to the Fantasy Authority Game Day show here on a Week 13 edition. Week 13 of the NFL already, guys. It's crazy. It's going so fast. That means
Back to the Fantasy Authority
fantasy
Game
playoffs
Day.
are next year. I have to mute the YouTube thing. Fantasy playoffs are next week, not next year. They will be around next year as well, but not currently. So fantasy playoffs are coming very quickly. If it's not next week, it's the week after. If it's even later, then what are you doing? Week 16 and 17 playoffs. Could you imagine that? I don't want to imagine that. It sounds awful. A lot of stuff going on. Dallas Cowboys on Thursday night. I'd be remiss if I didn't mention it. They did pull out the win against Minnesota, 17-15. Minnesota fought much harder than I thought they would. That defense really kept Dak Prescott in check. The only problem is it's a two-headed monster, or a three-headed monster, I guess you could say. And Ezekiel Elliott was not held in check. Ezekiel Elliott was a monster yet again. How'd you like that game on Thursday, Ryan?
Oh, I mean, I loved it. For me, having McKinnon in a lot of leagues, that kind of, sucked to see him, come on later rather than when I needed him earlier in the year. But definitely a great matchup there. I mean, they looked like they were able to hold their own there for a little bit, but then Dallas is able to prevail as they have been all season. So yeah, I mean, I'm really interested to see if this Dallas team is going to get tested in the regular season going forward, or if they're just going to skate on into the playoffs there.
Yeah, we were just talking about McKinnon too. Me and you are going head-to-head right now in the Fantasy Authority PPR Listener League. I do have a playoff spot clinched in that league already, but I think you are still fighting for one, if I'm not mistaken. Your team,
yes.
I mean, if you're looking at projections, your team is projected to absolutely destroy the world this week with a projected 154. I mean, I know they're just projections, but your lineup, I'm a little scared this week.
Yeah, I mean, thankfully, you were able to tell me that I had two people on the bye, and then Vernon Davis was still out there, so I was able to slot him in at tight end. We'll see what happens, though. I mean, Arizona is really stout against the tight end. Vernon Davis, a guy I wrote up in my article this week, the TFA Contrarian. Hopefully, he can, just get a touchdown. I think that's what you're hoping for if you're looking to start Vernon Davis. But yeah, other than that, I think the rest of my team is still pretty solid.
I should have looked at the waivers or the free agents before I told you, because I'm starting CJ Fedorowicz. I would have much rather started Vernon Davis. I didn't even think to look. So that's on me. But, my team has been nothing short of awesome this year. We scored 190-something last week with Rob Gronkowski scoring 0. So it's not over yet. It's not over till it's over. Although I did have McKinnon 16.5, so there's that.
Yeah, that's rough. How would you have known, though? How would you have known that?
Oh, there's no way. I'm okay with it. There's just no way I would have started McKinnon. Really, he's on my roster to prevent anybody else in the league from getting him at this point.
Absolutely.
Interesting. You swapped DeMarco Murray for Darren Sproles with Doug Martin on your bench. What was the thought process there?
Yeah, I might be going back to Doug Martin. My thing is with Jordan Matthews out, I think that a lot of people are going to be looking at the receivers, I think. But I like the way Darren Sproles was used in that Monday night game this past week. Wentz is going to look to him on checkdowns, I think, a lot. And then Sproles just always has the ability, since he's the punt returner too, to take one back to the house there. So I do like the upside with him there. And then Tampa Bay on the road against San Diego. I mean, I really do think I like Doug Martin in that matchup. I just think the safer play for me is Sproles.
All right, fair enough, I guess.
In a PPR league.
Right, this is the PPR league, important to note. It'll be interesting to see if that lineup changes for the 1 o'clock game. I'll be keeping an eye on it. Before we get into the injuries today, I just want to remind everybody that if you do have fantasy questions, put them right here in the chat on YouTube, or go ahead on over to Twitter and use hashtag AskTFA. We'll be pulling questions from both that hashtag and from YouTube throughout the show. So if you have a question, don't be afraid to just throw it in there. We will answer it almost immediately. Let's get on to the injuries, guys. Just get that news in here out of the way. It will be updated throughout the show, as of course, because right now we're kind of going off of preliminary stuff. It's only we still have an hour and 15 minutes until the first games kick off. So a lot of stuff is still preliminary. It's still game time decision. So if it gets updated throughout the show, we will update you. We got our eyes on a few different sites that are keeping us up. So first things first, Denver Broncos quarterback Trevor Siemian is out. Paxton Lynch is going to get the start. What do we feel about that, guys? Demaryius Thomas, Emmanuel Sanders, how does that affect their game today?
This wasn't really a game that I liked at all to begin with. I think it's going to be a defensive struggle on both sides of the football. Last time we saw Paxton Lynch, I mean, he was pretty bad. So I think you downgrade the Denver wide receivers because Jacksonville does, have a solid pass defense. Their secondary is pretty underrated with Jalen Ramsey and some of the other guys that they have there. So I don't feel great about that. I think if you're attacking anything, it's going to be – I think you feel okay about Devontae Booker and his touches that he'll likely get. Obviously, I mean, if you have Demaryius Thomas and Emmanuel Sanders, you're likely going to be starting them. But I don't feel great about it. And then on the other side of the football, I don't really feel good about anybody in that entire team. Julius Thomas is out. I mean, they're missing a ton of weapons there. So like Allen Robinson for me is like a low end wide receiver 3. But other than that, I just don't think that you feel great about anybody in this matchup.
Yeah, I feel the same way too. We saw Paxton Lynch play earlier this year. The offense really didn't hit their stride, like the Broncos offense. And, it's one thing to be said about Trevor Siemian, where a lot of people were hating on the guy because they're like, oh, he's just a game manager. He really is not able to, the offense. And Emmanuel Sanders was complaining about not seeing targets and things of that nature. But like recently in the past couple of weeks, like Siemian has been playing pretty damn good. And, we got to remember that he is a rookie in the scheme of that offense, but he has been, kind of their leader, so to speak, and he's been playing up to par. And when you take away a guy like that and you just throw in Paxton Lynch, who we've seen before and hasn't played well, matchup against Jacksonville, I think that we're going to see a lot of things, there's going to be a lot of pressure on this Broncos D to give these guys a short field. And if Jacksonville is able to put up points today, ugly game for Denver, I think. Too convinced on Paxton Lynch. So I think if they're going to win this game, I think it's going to be on the defense, and the defense will have to put up at least 7 points.
It'll be an interesting one, I think. I would like to see Paxton Lynch do something good. Trevor Siemian, like you said, he's been okay. He's been the leader. He hasn't, lit the world on fire. Not that I think any of us expected him to. A late-round quarterback that is playing decent is pretty impressive in and of itself. But I do think Paxton Lynch is probably the future there. There's a reason they traded up into the first round to draft him. So let's see how much better he's gotten since the last time he started, which was earlier on in the year. Up until now, which is week 13. Very interested to see that. Just from a pure football perspective, see how he does, how he improves. We do have a question in YouTube. We'll get to that right after we're done with the injuries, man. We'll be sure to get to that question. So on to the running backs, guys. Ryan Matthews and Chris Ivory are both out. I'm not sure that this is a major fantasy I'm not sure that this has major fantasy implications. Darren Sproles has been pretty much the guy in Philadelphia. It may have better implications for Wendell Smallwood, who seems will get a lot of work again this week, but he still hasn't done anything yet this year. I mean, I don't even know that he has double-digit fantasy points in a game this year, Smallwood, but it does at least his upside is there. From the wide receiver perspective, Robert Woods and Percy Harvin are both out. Sammy Watkins, the last I've seen, is expected to play. I am very high on Sammy Watkins this week against Oakland. I think he got 83 yards last week in like a small percentage of snaps. I think it was 40-something percent of the snaps. He's the only receiver they really have at this point. I do understand, though, that the risk is there because he still has, reports came out that he still has a broken bone in his foot and he's just kind of playing through it. So at any given time, he could go out of the game and get you nothing. I like the risk. What do you guys think of that situation there in Buffalo?
I mean, I think you got to play him. He's the type of guy who could pay off your fantasy week in one catch. So with him playing, I feel pretty good about it, though there is that risk of re-injury or for him to, be sat. Rex Ryan's not known to, take it easy with his guys. We've already seen it with LaShawn McCoy this year. So this should be a high-scoring game. I believe I saw somewhere that this is the highest over-under of Tyrod Taylor's career as a starter at 49. So they are Vegas expecting this to be some points scored here. So I do like Sammy Watkins. And I think, I think if in this scenario, I think I would probably still fire him up.
Yeah. Like Kev said, I mean, my favorite thing to go back to is last year where this dude was just, a lot of targets, but every catch that he was, reeling in seemed like a touchdown. He's like Deshaun Jackson, it's like the dude could get, a 3 for 130 and 2 line. I mean, that's just how dynamic of a player he is. If he's not getting the down runs, then yeah, who knows? But because he has the ability to do that on any given week, I think you just have to start him. I mean, he's really definitely a high-end wide receiver 2, low-end wide receiver 1 compared to anybody out there on the field. So unless you have a receiver going in, the Saints Detroit game this week, or if you have a Julio Antonio Brown or somebody like that, obviously you're starting them. But if Sammy Watkins over Allen Robinson, I would start Sammy Watkins over how dynamic of a player I think the guy is when he suits up.
Here's a good one. We were just talking about one of these guys, Ryan. How about Sammy Watkins, Tevin Coleman, or Doug Martin? If we're talking flex and you're comparing them to these kind of bubble guys, I think Coleman and Martin can be considered bubble guys at this point. Which one are you going with there?
I would probably still yeah, I mean it'd be between Doug Martin and Sammy Watkins. I kind of lean on Sammy just because of this high total here of the game. I wouldn't mind having either one of those guys in, but for me it'd probably be Sammy.
Sammy Watkins. All right. Anything further on that, Kev, before we go ahead and move on to the other receivers here?
Nope.
All right, so Allen Hurns is out. Tavon Austin, doubtful. Jeremy Maclin remains out. Devontae Parker is active, which is bad news for Landry owners, good news for Parker owners. Jordan Matthews is likely to be out, but he is one of those game-time decisions I was speaking of earlier. Let's see. Jones. What?
I think he's been ruled out, Anthony. Sorry, I didn't mean to cut you off, but I think he's ruled out.
No problem. That's good. That's good updated information. So Jordan Matthews ruled out. Marvin Jones ruled out. Rob Gronkowski done for the season. A huge blow, especially for the value or not the value, for the price that you had to pay in the draft, myself included. Tough to see him out already in week 13, right before the playoffs. Julius Thomas also out for second week in a row there for Thomas. Any of these surprises to you guys? How about guys who are getting a big boost from one of these players being out?
The main guy that I'm looking at is DGB with Jordan Matthews out. That quarter in the Philadelphia Monday night game, and Carson Wentz just peppered this dude with targets. Now, I don't know why he stopped going to him, because Beckham seemed like to catch everything thrown his way. And I know he's one of those guys that nobody likes. You know, we all want to make fun of him because he got traded for an offensive lineman. You know, nobody wanted him, but it's like this dude has found something in Philly. And when you look at the rest of their receiving core without Matthews, like, it does not scare me at all. These are a bunch of practice squad guys, a bunch of rookies. Like, DGB's been in the league for a couple seasons now. I think it's clear to me that he has a rapport with Wentz at the quarterback position. So he's a guy that I would definitely look for in that game. And then obviously Marvin Jones is out. If you have Golden Tate, he's an easy start. I don't see how Tate doesn't get double-digit fantasy points this week. And then obviously, you know, if Bolden was out there, I'd probably, you know, maybe get Bolden in if you have a couple guys that you're questionable about, just because there's going to be a lot of scoring in that game, and we know how Bolden gets looked at in the red zone. So.
All right, good stuff there. I like DGB as well, man. You're right. He's found something there in Philadelphia, and we know he has the talent, right? It was just kind of the whole upstairs situation, which is the case many times with these receivers. So good call out. With Jordan Matthews out, he could see a much bigger role today if you need yourself a receiver or a flex spot. Kev, anybody getting a huge boost from these injury scenarios that you really kind of want to point out there?
I mean, we're talking about the wide receivers. I think Anquan Bolden, as you talked about, Ryan, I think certainly is a guy. He's actually been far more involved in the offense than I think people realize with him. I think that he makes for a fine wide receiver 3 today in that matchup against the Saints. I mean, I want as much exposure to that game as I possibly can. And, I mean, Anquan Bolden is a great way to get it. The Jeremy Maclin news wasn't really surprising, but it was a little bit because he was able to return to practice this week. So, but the beat writers out here in Kansas City did, you know, come out and think that he was probably still a week away from returning. So this is probably a smart move for them, especially with the short turnaround against Oakland on Thursday. So, I think Tyreek is still the guy. I have him actually as a wide receiver 2. He's going to, especially in PPR formats, he's going to be fed the football like he has all year. I think him and Travis Kelce are both excellent plays today, and 2 guys I would really, you know, target. And then, you know, the other ones, I don't think there's really anything. Like you mentioned, Dorial Green-Beckham. It does scare me to put him in my lineups, just because, I mean, we saw it last week where he kind of got fed the ball a little bit early, and then they just completely went away from him, and so I think it's going to really depend on game flow and things like that, depending on how involved he can be. Because, I mean, on the other side of the football, Cincinnati is missing a ton of options there. So I think it's going to ultimately depend on game flow and game script, how involved he is. But I still think that for anybody looking for a flex or something like that, I think he's certainly worth a look.
All right. We do have some questions coming in, guys. Let's hop right on over to those. First one comes from Anthony T. I'm just going to call you because I'm not going to try to pronounce your last name as usual. Who would you start, Enunwa or Thursday? That doesn't make any sense. Enunwa, Hill, or Watkins in a half PPR league? I think he meant T. Hill, and his phone autocorrected to Thursday Hill, which is pretty funny, actually. So Enunwa, Tyreek Hill, or Sammy Watkins in a half-point PPR?
Oh.
And a half point, I'd probably go.
I think I'd probably go Hill myself.
Yeah, I'd probably go Hill, to be honest.
I mean, I love the Sammy Watkins upside. I absolutely do. But if he still is dealing with a broken bone in that foot, and you got a guy like Tyreek Hill who's just been on fire lately, I don't know that I'm going to bench Hill for the risk there.
I'd probably go Sammy Watkins.
Really now?
I mean, I have Sammy Watkins ranked 19th this week, and I have Tyreek Hill 23rd. So
He's sticking to the rankings. He's sticking to it.
I mean, you have to like what Sammy. So for the Buffalo, I mean, Charles Clay is out, Robert Woods is out. I mean, they literally have nobody, and so I think as long as he can, stay healthy for Sammy Watkins, I think he sees a massive amount of targets. And like I said, I love Tyreek Hill, and he has been able to find the end zone. But I mean, on a week-to-week basis, his touchdown upside isn't massive, and so I don't know. Like I said, I really like Tyreek Hill, but for me, I think I would probably go with Sammy Watkins.
Gosh, that's our typical, and we haven't seen this since the beginning of the year. Kev, is our conservative versus aggressive approaches to fantasy, especially when it comes to the draft and lineup construction. I always stay conservative. I really love Sammy Watkins though, so it's a really tough one for me. I guess if you want upside, you go Watkins. If you want floor, you may go Hill. I don't know even that though. Alexander's back, guys. He says he's one win away from the playoffs. He can get anywhere from the 4 to 6 seed. He's got 2 questions, only 2 questions, he said, but he'll have more throughout the show, I'm sure. Moncrief or Michael Thomas in a half-point PPR is his first question.
Both excellent options, but I'd go Michael Thomas.
Yeah, we got Michael Thomas versus the Lions and Moncrief versus the Jets. Thomas is at home, Moncrief away. I would probably stick with Michael Thomas as well. How about you, Ryan?
Yeah, I'd go Michael Thomas too. Yeah, I don't. It's not close for me, but I can see the enticing factor with Luck being back for Moncrief. But Thomas is just a must start at this point.
Absolutely. It's a clean sweep for Mike Thomas. Stick him in there. Feel good about it, Alexander. He also says he has Rivers or Kaepernick. It's only 4 points per passing touchdown. Should he go Cap since he has the opportunity to possibly get a rushing touchdown?
I was high on Colin Kaepernick to start the week. I actually think I had him like 6th overall, or QB 6 in my rankings. But I have dropped him out of a QB 1 with, and I'm not typically a guy who plays huge into weather reports, because I think it can be misleading. But the weather reports there in Chicago do have me concerned with 2 quarterbacks who aren't, I think this is going to be a ground and pound style of football game. Yes, Colin Kaepernick does provide the ability to be able to run the football, but the Chicago Bears have been pretty stout at home on the defensive side of the football. So with all things considered, I just can't – I don't feel great about starting Kaepernick, especially when you have Phillip Rivers as your other option. I'm definitely starting Phillip Rivers.
Yeah, a lot of concern I've seen on Twitter for the snow there in Chicago today. I don't know, man. With 4-point passing touchdowns, Phillip Rivers he's been Phillip Rivers. The Buccaneers defense has actually been pretty good too. I want to lean Kaepernick in this game, but I think you have a very good point that this could turn into a bit of a ground and pound. Chicago's defense actually hasn't been that bad either. So I'm usually, if I'm going through and they're pretty even, I go to who's home, who's away. Phillip Rivers is at home, Kaepernick's away, so I would agree. I'm going to go with Rivers there against the red hot, in quotes, Tampa Bay Bucks.
They are. I mean, they've knocked off Seattle, knocked off Kansas City in Kansas City. So they've been pretty damn good. Their defense has definitely turned it around.
Gerald McCoy's a beast. What do you think, Ryan? You agree with Rivers, or are you going with Cat?
Oh man, I agree with Rivers. Yeah, the weather concerns are definitely a factor. So 3 to 5 inches of snow. I just don't see it, but yeah, I don't know. It's one of those things where like Caps really surprised me a lot at the end, and Rivers has really disappointed me a lot on the bad end here. So I'm always cautious of Rivers in favorable matchups, but with him being at home, I think he's definitely the better option to go here.
There it is, another clean sweep. So, Alexander, you got your answers, buddy. It is Mike Thomas at wide receiver and Phillip Rivers at the quarterback position. Thanks so much for sticking around with us most of the year, man. We appreciate it a lot. More questions coming in. A Machine is back. Thank you for joining us again, Machine. He says Russell Wilson or Eli Manning. Looks like Russell Wilson's going against the Carolina Panthers, whereas Eli is going against the Pittsburgh Steelers. Russell at home, Eli on the road. Who wants to start that one off? Silence is not golden, fellas.
I would lean Russell. For me, I'd lean Russell. Another guy I wrote up this week in my article, and primetime games for Russell Wilson seem to be a thing. Like everybody thinks he's really good on primetime games, and while he is good on the primetime Monday night games, he has a good touchdown to interception ratio, but he hasn't been winning those games. And we can just look back at, the Arizona Seattle game that was 6-6 tie. So that, the Sunday night narrative might be overblown just a little bit, but I do like Russell in this matchup. I think opposing quarterbacks who are stars is a game that he gets up for, and Cam Newton's here. The Panthers are pretty much in a must-win situation. So are the Seahawks, really, when you think about it. So I think that this game has some sneaky shootout potential. I'm kind of weary about Thomas Rawls too. They say he's going to be used, but I never trust Pete Carroll. So I really do think that the onus comes back on Russell Wilson here. I think him and Baldwin really find a groove and are able to get something going. So I really like Russell Wilson this week.
And the other option was Eli Manning.
Yes.
See, here's the thing. Everyone's sort of overlooking Eli Manning this week, and I don't really understand why. This game profiles as another very high scoring matchup between them and the Steelers. So I don't know. I don't quite understand why people seem to be off of Eli Manning this week. And most rankings that I've seen, around he's like QB 19, QB 18. I just don't understand that. I think he has just as much QB1 upside as anybody, and I would actually go Eli Manning in that scenario. I just think it profiles more of a high scoring game, and I think that that he's a very sneaky play this week.
Eli, huh? They're both tough calls, I think, because they both have the
problem is you summed it up right there, Anthony, with your reaction. Like Eli, it just never leaves a good taste in your mouth. Like every time you try to utter the words, it's like, yeah, maybe not.
Maybe not. Well, they both have the propensity for just absolute busts of games, right? I mean, it's like both quarterbacks are very hard to trust. I think I probably would lean Russell Wilson a little more than Eli here. Just for the very reason that you just said, Ryan, the Eli again situation. That is obviously not great fantasy analysis. Personal
Oh, it's
bias against
terrible.
back, but
Well, over his last 4 games, Eli Manning has thrown for just under 1,000 yards and 12 touchdowns, most in the league. So, I feel fine with him. And like I said, this game really feels to me like a game that's going to be very high scoring. So I would lean that way.
Yeah.
all right.
The Steelers secondary can be attacked for sure. They're not great. On paper it looks good. It's just no Eli, and he just worries me every time.
The amazing thing is here, so I'm looking at their stats from the last 4 games here. Eli versus Russell. And in this league that I'm looking at, 6-point touchdowns and all that, they're only 1 point apart. But Eli has double the touchdowns of Russell Wilson. So I'm not quite sure how the scoring is working out here. But just for your sake, the statistics-wise, based on Yahoo here at least, 918 yards, 12 touchdowns for Eli, 1,053 yards, and 6 touchdowns for Wilson. So Eli definitely has the touchdown performance there between the two of them.
Well, Russ has 115 rushing yards and a rushing touchdown over that span. And then Eli has thrown 4 interceptions to the 2 of Russell Wilson. So that's kind of basically. So, but like I said, I just feel like that this game is Pittsburgh Giants game. Could be the highest scoring game of the day.
All right. Ortiz 530 Cali, thank you for joining us, man. He says Malcolm Mitchell, Demaryius Thomas, or Dante, or let's go Hightower, or Tim Hightower. It's the last game of the season. Win and get in. This is a flex spot call, obviously. Malcolm Mitchell, Demaryius Thomas, or Hightower.
It's gonna be Demaryius Thomas for me.
Even with Paxton Lynch in there?
Yeah.
I think last time Paxton Lynch played, he leaned on Thomas. Is that right? I'm just trying to remember off the top of my head. I don't have the stats in front of me or anything.
Correct.
If I remember correctly, he leaned on Demaryius Thomas. Tim Hightower is a guy who continuously scores, at least in our PPR league, like a ton of points. And I just can't trust him. I can't trust that this guy is going to get enough workload to actually start him. Malcolm Mitchell is very intriguing, but if you listen to our podcast from Tuesday, not very high on him to continue the trend there. And then, Demaryius Thomas is Demaryius Thomas. I would agree with Kev. I would stick with Thomas. What do you think, Ryan?
I kind of like my Malcolm Mitchell, to be honest. It's been a while since we've seen Brady really be Brady and put up a 3 touchdown number game, but I think this could definitely be that week. I'm really one that buys into narratives a lot. That's probably one of my biggest problems in fantasy is I buy into narratives, but I really just don't think – I think Belichick just wants to stick it to Jeff Fisher. Like, I think this would just be a perfect spot for him to just, to Jeff Fisher. I mean, Jeff Fisher, he's disrespecting the team by, not knowing who his running backs are. And Belichick are, just going to want to put the gas on. And Malcolm Mitchell's a guy who's really been hot in the past 4 games here, and with no Gronk in, Bennett's kind of dealing with injuries. Edelman's dealing with injuries. I think he could be a sneaky play this week. I'd love him. If he was on my team, I'd try and get him in anywhere that I could. I really don't trust Demaryius at all. The Paxton Lynch thing. I think if anybody's going to go off, it's going to be Sanders. Either. And I can't even remember who the other guy was now, but I was going to take Mitchell over him too. Oh, was it Hightower?
Hightower.
Yeah, Hightower would probably be second for me.
So looking back at the numbers, week 5 with Paxton Lynch, the 1 week he did start, Demaryius Thomas received 7 targets, but Emmanuel Sanders received 9. 7 catches, 80 yards for Emmanuel Sanders, and 5 catches for 50 yards and a touchdown for Demaryius Thomas during that 1 week that he did start. So Emmanuel Sanders did see more targets by 2. Obviously, Demaryius Thomas outscored him with the touchdown. But the thing with Malcolm Mitchell, I do like him as well. I think he's a sneaky play. However, there's just so many options in that offense that it makes it tough to start him. Yes, they don't have Gronk, but they still are going to have Martellus Bennett and Edelman and Amendola and Deion Lewis and James White. I mean, there's so many options there in that offense. And here's the thing that scares me the most, that the Patriots are not the Patriots without Rob Gronkowski on that football field. I'm not saying that the Patriots are going to fall apart and the Patriots are going to be terrible now, but their offense hasn't been nearly explosive without Rob Gronkowski. So I don't feel as great about that. Yes, they have Martellus Bennett, but they've the games that he didn't play this year, they used Martellus Bennett more of as a blocker than anything, and so the Rams defense is better than or is better than what some people give them credit for. So I don't feel great about doing that. Even with Paxton Lynch, I would have to start the other option, I over Malcolm Mitchell, just because I think you're getting too cute at a time that it's a must win. So I would have to go with Demaryius Thomas.
It's funny you should say that. That's something I've been telling myself as I set my lineups this week is, hey, don't get too cute, right? You've done it all year. Your teams are doing well. Don't overthink it now. And that's exactly what everybody else should be telling themselves too as you set your lineups. Try not to get too cute. Try not to fall in love with the guys who have been, had 1 or 2 good weeks. Stick with your guys who have done it consistently all year. I definitely see both sides of the argument here. Malcolm Mitchell has been hard to ignore the past 2 weeks. I think he has 3 touchdowns in that time. He has some sort of rapport with Brady, but then Kev's side is also a very good point. You never know which Patriot skill position is going to get the points for a given week. They spread the ball out way too much for me to trust that situation. Demaryius Thomas is going to get 5 to 7 targets, even with Paxton Lynch in there. And you know what? It's really up to the receivers there in Denver to help their young quarterback out. So I think Demaryius is probably a bit safer of a play there. Hightower is probably not even in consideration at all, I don't think, for any of us.
If you have Demaryius Thomas or Emmanuel Sanders, the main thing you need to look at is who Jalen Ramsey is expected to be lining up against. Because whoever Jalen Ramsey's lining up against, I don't want any part of. I'm just going to throw that out there. And I think the same thing can be said for the Denver's offense, just like the Patriots. We don't know who Paxton Lynch, who's going to be the guy. Jordan Norwood, for all we know.
You're giving Jalen Ramsey that much respect already? He's a rookie.
Rookie, but he's been shutting down number 1 receivers all year. I mean, we've seen it time and again. These guys come in there, they're like, oh, it's Jalen Ramsey. Goes out and performs. I mean, the guy's a baller. This is why Jacksonville invested in him. It's week 13 now. I think when this was being said, week 3, week 4, week 5, that's fine. But the dude has 13 weeks under his belt now. Some credit.
Fair point, man. Fair point. You're always coming at us with that cornerback knowledge. You got a tight eye on those corners, man. Good on you there.
Hey, man, love corner. Played corner. Love it.
Ortiz came back. He said Golden Tate is still available. Would you start him over any of those 3 that we were just talking about?
Yeah, hell yeah.
Well, yeah. Should have said that first.
All right, so it appears Golden Tate is the answer. I just saw it, guys. I'm sorry. Don't yell at me. They like Golden Tate over all of those options, Ortiz. So go pick him up. Probably drop Hightower and plug Tate into your lineup. Machine has another question at receiver, guys. Landry, Fitzgerald, or Robinson? So Jarvis Landry, Larry Fitzgerald, or Allen Robinson?
Larry Fitzgerald.
I agree. Ryan?
Larry Fitzgerald for me too.
Yeah, Robinson has an absolute brutal matchup against Denver, and Jarvis Landry with Devontae Parker playing. I saw an article that wrote about it, and I talked a little bit about it in my article. Is the Dolphins' offense is changing from that little dink and dunk that made Landry such a good fantasy player to pound the rock up the middle and then throw it to the outside, which is a complete 180 from what they were doing last year. So unfortunately for Landry owners, it's an unfortunate change for them, a good change for Parker owners or Ajayi owners. If only we can get that offensive line back. Thanks, y'all. Good luck this week. Definitely subscribing. Thank you so much, Ortiz. We appreciate the support, man. Have a good weekend. Best of luck, buddy. Hopefully we make it into the playoffs. Hopefully we make it into the playoffs.
True story.
Ryan has to beat me this week to make it into the playoffs. Go, Ryan. 1v1, buddy.
V1.
For all the marbles. Oh, gosh. So that's all the questions we have right now. You guys, if you have any more, feel free to throw them in that chat. You know how it works. Just get your little keyboard, type it in there, or your phone. I don't know, however you're listening. You can also use hashtag AskTFA on Twitter. We will be paying attention to that hashtag all day long as well. We want to make sure we get all your questions answered. So, guys, while we wait for more questions to kind of come in here, unless you have other ones that you have people kind of bringing to you to bring up, let's talk a little bit about some top plays of the week. This is week 13. There are a lot of big names out there, and a lot of those big names seem to have some tough matchups. So who do you guys have as sort of your top plays of the week, guys, you're really banking on this week? Kev, we'll start with you, bud.
Well, I think the interesting one to talk about, at least that I'd be interested to hear what Ryan's perspective is anyways, is the wide receivers position. I think Julio Jones, Antonio Brown, Evans, and Odell Beckham all are in pretty good spots this week to really produce. And it was hard for me to really decide how I was going to rank them because I think they're all four in terrific spots. How would you rank those top four, let's say in terms of like a DFS perspective? How would you rank those four?
I would probably go Beckham, Brown, then Evans. Well, I guess so. Phillip Gaines is out. So does Nelson, is Julio going to be lined up on Nelson or he gets away from Marcus Peters?
Yeah, I mean Marcus Peters doesn't shadow, so I mean he's going to be playing the side that he plays, and that's it. So and Julio Jones actually plays far more on the opposite side of what Marcus Peters does. So that's not really a concern, and so
right. Julio to me is just such a good play this week. Like I just love Julio this week. I think that he could go absolutely nuts. And I guess 1A, 1 or 2A, 2B for Antonio Brown and Odell Beckham. I really do think that the Giants' defense is underappreciated. I think they're going to try and find a way to, get some bracket coverage on Brown to kind of limit him. I really like Bell more than Brown this week, which makes me like Odell because I think that there's no matchup that the Steelers have to stop Odell this week. And then, Mike Evans, he's so good, but I mean, those other three guys I just think are in better spots.
So you go how'd you Antonio Brown, then what? Then Julio, Odell, and Mike Evans?
I would go Julio, then Beckham, then Brown, then Evans.
Interesting. Because for me, I think Mike Evans deserves to be number one. I think he has the best matchup of the and I think the thing that scares you about Julio is Julio Jones is like very boom or bust, right? Which I mean, he's far more boom than he is ever bust. But he can have those games where, like we saw like last week, where they tend to spread the ball around to the other options and use Julio Jones, far more sparingly. Though I will say that for me, I think it's very close because Julio Jones is not going to see much of Marcus Peters today. I fully believe that, and if that's the case, as we saw last week, Emmanuel Sanders just absolutely roast that other side, whether it was Philip Gaines. It is good news, I guess, that Philip Gaines isn't going to be playing. But, Steven Nelson and the other options, Acker and a couple other guys they have there in the corner, isn't much. They could bracket coverage, but just not something the Chiefs do. I think you're going to see them trying to bring the heat. They do get D Ford back today, who was their leading sacker prior to being hurt last week. So with him and Justin Houston out there, you're going to see a ton of pressure. So I don't know how much time they're going to be able to get the ball deep to Julio. But regardless, I think Julio Jones are kind of right there, 1A, 1B for me. And then after that, I would go Antonio Brown, then Odell Beckham being 4. So.
Got it. Yeah. Julio does scare me with that boomer bust tag that you gave him there. His good is just so good. It's just out of this world. Antonio Brown, he's consistent. I think when he's on, he can really be on, but there's a lot of options there in Pittsburgh. Odell is capable of scoring 202 anytime, but this dude 300 yards in one game. I just cannot get over that this is this dude's upside. And just absolutely just over game. Haven't seen from that position in a long time, so that's why I'm always tending to lean him number one in prime matchups.
300-yard upside is it's a little impressive, right?
just a tad bit.
So just to recap, guys, for you DFS players out there looking for a top-tier wide receiver, Ryan ranks the top 4 as Julio, Beckham, Brown, and Evans, whereas Kev ranks the top 4 Evans, Julio, Brown, and OBJ. There was some A's and B's in there, but I just took those out because you don't get to cop out like that. I do have a question for you guys on a certain New Orleans Saints receiver not named Mike Thomas. Brandon Cooks came out last week when the Saints scored 49 points. He didn't have a single catch. He was complaining about his role in the offense, yada, yada, yada. We've seen this situation happen before, and in some of these situations, the guy comes out the next game and just balls out. I think he could have one of those games this week where he does that. I want to see what you guys think. Is this a good week to kind of just jump all over that Brandon Cooks rebound game?
Well, this has been a very hot topic all week, the squeaky wheel narrative, if you will, with Brandon Cooks, and it's kind of what everybody's sort of been talking about. I don't really buy into that narrative that gets thrown around quite a bit, especially once a top wide receiver either complains or isn't nearly as involved the week before. I just don't think that I just don't think NFL teams think that way, and I don't think they're going to go out today and just all of a sudden try to just design a game plan around Brandon Cooks because Brandon Cooks didn't like it, that he didn't receive any targets. I think they're just going to continue doing what they're doing, and if Brandon Cooks is there in the read and everything else, and I think it'll happen. But so I think he's a fine play. I like Michael Thomas more, and to be honest with you, I kind of like Willie Snead even more than them. I think he could be the best play of the day in that offense, and kind of the guy that most people are going to be overlooking. He gets Quandre Diggs, who is the Lions' worst corner, and so I really like Willie Snead today. A lot of people aren't really talking about him. You have to love Michael Thomas. Michael Thomas has been a beast all year, and Brandon Cooks, of course, at any moment can score a touchdown, but I don't think they're going to just funnel the football to him just because of, he went out and complained. So that doesn't really bother me. Like I said, I really like Willie Snead. And then a little deeper, I kind of like, I like Josh Hill. I like Josh Hill more than Coby Fleener. If I had a choice between the two, I would choose Josh Hill. Josh Hill played the majority of the snaps last week. I think he played 78% of the snaps to 18% to Coby Fleener. Coby Fleener just cannot figure out the offense. He has not been very good. If people still own Coby Fleener, I don't know why. I would have dropped him a long time ago. He just hasn't been very good this year. And Josh Hill, has been involved in this offense for years. They kept him. He was a guy that I believe that was signed a restricted free agent deal with Chicago until the Saints matched it. So obviously they do like Josh Hill. So I sort of like him as well.
That's a lot to feed off of there, Ryan. What do you think?
Wow. Yeah. Yeah. I mean, I like Josh Hill too. It's so funny. Like, you just can never trust any given week. So, I mean, I think the only player I would trust in the offense is Michael Thomas. But definitely, looking at it from the DFS standpoint, I love Snead. I think I was a week too early on him last week. I wrote him up last week. I really thought that he would, get it going, but he just didn't have that favorable of a matchup. And now this week, with everybody being on Cooks early in the week was a guy that I thought about writing up, and then buying into the squeaky wheel narrative. And it is a home game, which I always talk about with Cooks. His best games are at home. So from that standpoint, but if you're trying to get an edge over, 10,000, 100,000 people, I think that Snead, definitely enters in there as an option who's still being utilized in the offense. I mean, the dude threw for a touchdown last week. So, I mean, he does have capabilities to get you points in multiple avenues. And yeah, I can't trust Fleener. Can't stand the guy. I thought this was going to be a real big year for him, and then lo and behold, Josh Hill is the one getting targets here in that offense. I just think Breeze trusts him more. So, yeah. Hill and Thomas, I think, are the safest plays, and then other than that, I'd probably look to get Snead in.
This may come as a surprise, guys, but Coby Fleener is a tight end 1 in PPR leagues this year. Crazy as that sounds, because he's been extremely inconsistent, that may speak more about the state of the tight end than anything else. So let's rank them. Let's rank the New Orleans Saints pass catchers. All right, we got Cooks, we got Thomas, we got Snead, and then we got Fleener and Hill. Kev, let's start with you. Rank these 5 for this week. We got Cooks, Thomas, Snead, Fleener, Hill.
Well, I mean, Thomas would be 1, Cooks would be 2, Snead would be 3, and then Hill, then Fleener. I mean,
all right.
Cooks, Thomas.
Brian?
Yeah.
There's Michael Thomas, Brandon Cooks, Willie, Josh Hill, Coby Fleener. Any disagreements there?
Thomas. I go Thomas, Cooks, Snead.
Yeah, that's what the order is. Thomas, Cooks, Snead, Hill. Okay, so you guys agree. So it's Thomas, Cooks, Snead, Hill, and then Fleener there dead last as far as pass catchers go on the outside there for the New Orleans Saints. We do have another question come in from Machine. Latavius Murray, Doug Martin, or Jordan Howard?
Jordan Howard.
For sure.
Yeah, Jordan Howard for me as well. I completely agree. All right, we have less than 30 minutes until kickoff, fellas. It's going so fast. It goes so fast every week. How about a bust of the week? You guys talked about, how to pick a top-notch receiver there in your DFS lineups. What about a guy to avoid this week who maybe a lot of people are riding high on or thinking, hey, I'm going to start this guy and get a ton of points? Maybe not.
I don't like Jay Ajayi at all this week. Terrible matchup. Offensive lineman hurt. We've kind of talked about this before with Jay Ajayi, that a lot of his the key to his success has been the offensive line there in Miami. It does sound like they're going to get Brandon Albert back, but Brandon Albert's going to be wearing a cast, so I mean that's obviously a concern. And so the Ravens have been elite against the run all year. So I want nothing to do with Jay Ajayi. And I know that for a lot of people, he's still ranked as a solid RB2 this week, and I won't. Not anywhere close to that for me.
Yep, good point there. I think Tunsil is coming back as well, but he is also wearing a cast, so we're going to have two casted linemen there. Good call on Ajayi. Ryan, what do you think? A bust that you're kind of avoiding this week?
Oh man. I mean, one team I've just been avoiding all across the board, which I don't know if it's because I think they'll bust or if I'm just scared about rostering them, is the Oakland passing game. So I think a lot of people were buying into, Cooper having a bounce back game as well as Cooks because he's been shut down. I just can't find a way to fit him in. So I've kind of just been avoiding him, and I just never play Crabtree to begin with or Carr. So I'm kind of just off of both of those guys. People have been buying into the Oakland passing game a lot. So I guess that's one situation I'm not sure how to handle there with their matchup against Buffalo.
Don't like the Raiders versus Buffalo. I hope Crabtree has a big game. I have him starting in one league, so keeping the fingers crossed. From a DFS perspective, I don't know. I haven't played at all this year, surprisingly enough. But you would know a little better, you guys, in your infinite DFS wisdom. Machine has one more question for us. Dean D. Hopkins, which was a spell check from DeAndre Hopkins, or Mohamed Sanu?
Hopkins or Sanu?
That's tough. So Hopkins going against the Packers. Mohamed Sanu is going against the Chiefs. Sanu is at home, and Hopkins is on the road.
Oh man, I'd probably lean Sanu. That's another one of those guys. I have Hopkins in a couple season-long leagues, and I'm literally considering benching him. That's who I have on my team. It's supposed to snow. Well, I guess it is snowing there right now in Green Bay. Like, no thank you, Osweiler. I love the Packers defense this week. I think that they just take advantage of this Houston team. I haven't been able to trust Hopkins all year. This is probably like one of the worst matchups to trust him in. So I'm off for DeAndre.
That's tough because I actually love DeAndre Hopkins this week. Green Bay secondary is horrific. So
is Houston's quarterback.
Right. But I mean, it's Mohamed Sanu. Mohamed Sanu, I mean, hasn't really done anything.
That's true.
Outside of a game or two all year. So, I would rather have Taylor Gabriel in the offense, or obviously, I mean, Julio. We don't have to have the conversation about. But I mean, I'm just not on Sanu. I think there's better options that you could be maybe had. Depending on what type of league it is. But if I had to make a decision, I would still go with DeAndre Hopkins. I mean, he's still the number one, wide receiver in the offense. He's still going to be the guy that gets most of the looks. Could Sanu have a good game today? Absolutely. Kansas City secondary has, struggled outside of Marcus Peters, but it's going to depend on how the Falcons decide to roll their, line people up. Because if Sanu is going up against, sees a lot of Marcus Peters, well, then you want nothing to do with with Mohamed Sanu, because Marcus Peters has been one of the best corners in the league this year. And I doubt, they're going to want to, line Julio up, which I'm sure he's going to see some of Marcus Peters, but I don't know. I'm not a big fan of Mohamed Sanu. Mohamed Sanu has really done nothing all year. Quite similarly to Roddy White last year. So it's really been Taylor Gabriel has been the guy who stepped up in the offense, and not to mention they get Tevin Coleman back, he's back in the offense as well. So I would still go DeAndre Hopkins despite everything else.
Yeah, it's Tevin Coleman's first game back. He only had 9 yards on 8 carries, but he also had a touchdown. He is just a touchdown machine. I agree. I would stick with Hopkins over Sanu. Sanu is just nothing to write home about. And I really don't like Hopkins this week. I actually have him as a dud on my article. But perhaps you have somebody better in free agency. Let us know what your options are in free agency, and we can kind of help you out a little bit better there with starting somebody else instead. All right, just looking at the matchups here, guys. I want to see what we have here. Let's see. What do we think of this Redskins-Cardinals game? What do we expect out of this game? I feel like this is a red-hot Redskins offense coming off a tough loss there. Their last game, I believe, was against Dallas on Thanksgiving, right? If I'm not mistaken. Tough loss there. Going against a Cardinals offense that, if David Johnson wasn't there, would probably be the last place offense in the entire league. Carson Palmer not looking very good this year. Larry Fitzgerald looking like a beast as usual. And then all the other Cardinals receivers are just, it's like a whack-a-mole situation. Which one can you hit? So what do you think about this game? Redskins, Cardinals, who are your favorites? Who are your dislikes? What do we think?
I actually like J.J. Nelson. I've been on J.J. Nelson earlier in the year, and he sort of already had his breakout, then sort of fell apart. I like J.J. Nelson. I think depending on what happens with John Brown, if John Brown plays, which doesn't sound like he's going to, if John Brown doesn't play, I really like J.J. Nelson. I know a lot of people, with Josh Norman, but I think he would see far more of Michael Floyd in the offense. So I don't know. Like I don't see Josh Norman shadowing anybody because he doesn't play the slot, and that's where Larry Fitzgerald plays the most of. So I'm not overly concerned with that. So for me, a guy not named Larry Fitzgerald or David Johnson in the offense, I think J.J. Nelson would be the guy I'd be the most excited with on the Cardinals side. And then with Washington, I don't know. I just don't feel great about Washington this week. I think a lot of people will be on them, and maybe that makes them a sneaky play. But I just don't love Kirk Cousins on the road, and especially Kirk Cousins going up against Arizona, who does have a pretty good defense, especially without Jordan Reed. I will not be playing Vernon Davis. Vernon Davis will be playing against one of the best teams against the tight end position. So I think you still feel okay though with Jameson Crowder, who has been solid all season, and then possibly Deshaun Jackson could always bust off a long touchdown. So,
all right,
yeah, I gotta put Vernon Davis in from a DFS standpoint just because of his price. That he'll definitely get looks in the red zone. But I definitely get Kev's hesitation there to want to even roster him at all. I definitely like Pierre Garçon now that Reed is out too. I think that he'll definitely go underlooked, and he's somebody who was definitely coming on hot there, even with Reed in the lineup in his past couple of games, and a ton of targets his way. So that's a guy that I'd be looking for to really have a big game this week. On the Arizona side, yeah, I love the J.J. Nelson call a lot. Nobody wants to roster this guy right now. They're definitely sleeping on him, and I do like Fitzgerald. I think you start him every time, but if Fitzgerald is bogged down, and the rest of the Redskins secondary there, then I think J.J. Nelson is definitely in a good spot to take a big one to the house. So he's pretty much the only receiver that I would roster standpoint on the Arizona side.
All right. Yeah, Arizona has yet to allow a touchdown to a tight end this year. I've only allowed 60 fantasy points in PPR leagues to opposing tight ends. If Vernon Davis does get a touchdown, he will be the first one this season. It's possible. It's certainly possible. Not a very good matchup, though. Good calls on the rest of the stuff there, guys. Cardinals Redskins is one of the more interesting ones, I think, from the 4 o'clock games, 4:30 games, whatever, here on the East Coast. I'll be keeping a close eye on that one. Machine got back to us with available free agents in that DeAndre Hopkins versus Mohamed Sanu situation we were just talking about before. Tyreek Hill, Tyrell Williams, and Anquan Bolden are all available in free agency. So would you take any of those guys over the Hopkins Sanu situation?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Or
I would take Hill.
Yeah.
I would take Tyrell. I don't even know how Tyrell Williams is even available.
Yeah, gosh, you should try to pick up both of those guys, Hill and Williams. Is Williams playing this week? I didn't see it in the report there. He is playing?
Yeah, he is.
Okay, so Williams playing this week up against the Bucks, Hill against the Falcons. I agree with the Williams play there. I really love Tyreek Hill too, though. So if there's a way that you can pick up both, I would definitely try to do that. But Tyrell Williams should definitely be played over Mohamed Sanu. You could probably drop Sanu at this point for Williams straight there. One other thing I wanted to bring up, guys, not really fantasy related, but it's been a huge topic of conversation, is the college football playoffs. It looks like the 4 teams are Alabama, Clemson, Ohio State, Washington. Just kind of wanted to get that news out there for anybody who wasn't paying attention. Penn State and Michigan were both left out. They were ranked 5 and 6 in the final rankings here from the College Football Playoff Committee. So I'm sure there will be a lot of debate in the coming week over that decision there, but I think it was a little bit expected.
Pissed. You pissed about Washington, Kev?
No, I mean it is what it is, but it just goes to, for me, I think they need to come up with something different. They just need to expand the field. I just think that there's too many. You can sit there and you really come up with all kinds of scenarios of why other teams deserve to be in over Washington, or why Washington deserves to be in over the other teams. I mean, there's nobody can tell me that Michigan is not one of the best teams in the country. Even top 4 teams, in my opinion, they're definitely in that top 4. I think they would beat Washington, 7 or 8 times out of 10, on a neutral site. So, but it is what it is, and Michigan shouldn't have lost to Iowa or at Ohio State. So, but and then OU. There's just so many different. I just don't think it's enough. There's 5 major conferences, so only 4 are ever going to get in. Like I said, you could make an argument for Oklahoma, who is also 10-2, but they don't play a conference game, so people sort of knock them down. But I don't know. I just think they need to expand.
Oklahoma used to be a big-time team. Forgive my ignorance. I don't watch a lot of college football, but I remember them being a pretty big-time team not that long ago.
Oh, they still are. I mean, they're up there every year. I mean, so there hasn't been any fall off from them. But
yeah, as somebody like on the outside looking in, it baffles me that there's only a 4-team playoff. Like, if you're going to do a playoff, do it right. At least do 8. Ideally you would do 12, but I don't know. Maybe that's way too much for college football. I'm not sure, but I think at the very least you should be doing 8, not 4.
Absolutely.
What do we know, guys? What do we know? So we got about 14 minutes left, and that's based on my computer, which I think is wrong. Hold on one sec. We got 12 minutes left to go here. So let's just kind of pop off some questions here. We'll go on Twitter, grab a few. Deion Lewis or Sammy Watkins?
Watkins.
Lewis.
Okay, splitting it there. I'd probably go Watkins as well. Moncrief or Jordy Nelson? This is supposed to be fast, guys. Moncrief or Jordy Nelson? What is happening?
Nelson.
Kev?
Nelson. I was trying to see who AJ Boy was lined up against. He's going up against Devontae Adams. No, thank you there.
Derek Carr or Colin Kaepernick from South Rules on YouTube.
Oh, Derek Carr.
Derek Carr.
All right. Greg Olson or Jimmy Graham? That's a tough one.
Olson.
Yeah, I go Olsen too.
Olson and Olson. Okay. That was a joke one. I was almost read it too. That would have been hilarious. Cam Newton or Eli Manning?
Eli Manning.
Oh, Cam.
I go Eli as well. Cameron Meredith or Kenneth Dixon?
Shoot.
Cameron Meredith or Kenneth Dixon?
Yeah, Cameron Meredith or Kenneth Dixon?
Oh, Kenneth Dixon. I think Kenneth Dixon is a borderline RB2.
Ryan? I apologize for the slowest flash answering questions things in the history of the world.
Oh my gosh.
Jarvis Landry or Kenneth Dixon?
Kenneth Dixon.
Kev?
Kenneth Dixon.
Good talk. Tyreek Hill or Tyler Boyd?
Hill.
Hill and Ryan?
Hill.
Hill and Hill. Those are too many. Mark Ingram or Kelvin Benjamin? PPR.
Same.
Same what? Ingram or Benjamin? I didn't hear any answer. Sorry, it could be me.
Ingram.
Ingram. All right. Crabtree or Devontae Adams?
Crabtree.
Adams.
Adams versus the Texans. Crabtree versus the Bill. I'd probably go Crabtree as well. I do really like Adams, though. That's a tough one. Lamar Miller or Sammy Watkins?
Lamar Miller.
Lamar Miller.
Robert Kelly or Tim Hightower?
Tower.
Yeah, I'd probably go the same thing.
All right. Willie Snead or Mohamed Sanu? We already know the answer to that. Never mind. I didn't ask that. Jonathan Stewart or Jamison Crowder?
Crowder.
Oh, Crowder probably. I don't like it though.
South Rule says, LOL, guys, this is great. He's laughing at you. No, it's hilarious. It's a lot of fun, actually. TJ Yeldon or Jonathan Stewart?
Jonathan Stewart.
I agree, J2. Ryan, you agree?
Yep, agree.
All right. Booker or Ajayi?
Oh, Booker.
Ajayi.
Booker.
Did you say anything?
Booker.
Oh, I said Booker.
the Booker.
Oh, yeah. Ryan, you break out sometimes, and I don't even hear what you say. On your side, you're probably saying it. On my side, I'm like, what? Silence is golden. Oh, look at this heinous question. Aaron Rodgers or Colin Kaepernick?
Aaron Rodgers.
Aaron Rodgers.
Here's a New England Patriots question. LeGarrette Blount or Deion Lewis?
I want to know if it's a PPR or not.
It's not say. It just says Blount or Lewis.
Blunt.
Yeah, I'd go LeGarrette Blunt.
Mark Ingram or Thomas Rawls?
Rawls.
Ingram.
Rawls, Ingram. I'm going Rawls as well. Smallwood, Terrence West, or James Starks? Non-PPR, standard league. Smallwood, Terrence West, James Starks.
Give me James Starks in that one.
Woo. Ryan, going out on a limb, taking James Starks. What do you think, Kev?
You couldn't pay me to take James Starks, so I guess I would go Smallwood.
I'm taking Starks as well, though. So Starks is the answer. Kev is crying on his side now.
Starks.
How do these questions keep popping up? There's the same damn questions. I want new ones.
Jeremy Hill or Theo Riddick?
Ugh. Riddick.
Riddick.
Carlos Hyde or Jamison Crowder?
Carlos Hyde.
I'd go the same.
Double on Carlos Hyde. Watkins, Mitchell, or Crowder?
Mitchell.
Watkins.
I'd go Crowder. That's not helpful at all to that person. Tim Hightower or Tevin Coleman?
Tevin Coleman.
Tevin Coleman. Tyrell Williams or Sammy Watkins?
Tyrell.
What do you think, Ryan?
I'd go Tyrell too.
Okay. Watkins or Moncrief? A lot of Watkins questions.
Moncrief.
Moncrief too, yeah. Shoot.
Yep, Moncrief for me as well. Any YouTube, any other questions before we go ahead and sign off? We have 3 more minutes left. I'm just kind of reading these ones off of Twitter right now. So if you have a last minute question, make sure you get it in there. We will get to it, I hope. Dixon or Mitchell?
Dixon.
Dixon.
Dixon and Dixon. Lance Kendricks, Ladarius Green, or Jared Cook? Tight end question. Lance Kendricks, Ladarius Green, or Jared Cook?
Ladarius Green.
I was just going to say I'd probably take a chance on Green this week.
Just for me too.
So sweep for Green. That's rarity there. All right, guys. The DFS question. And, well, it could be a redraft question, too. Give me a defense this week. Give me a DST.
Jags. I'm pretty heavy on the Jags this week.
I love the Jags too.
Jacksonville, huh?
Love the Jags.
You guys answered that much quicker than I expected. Give me another one.
I think the Green Bay call that Ryan made earlier was great.
Yeah, Green Bay, love them.
Green Bay versus Houston and Jacksonville versus the Paxton Lynch-led Denver Broncos. We got about 2 minutes left, guys. I think that's enough for the quick questions. Oh, Machine has 2 more. Yeldon or Stewart? I think it's Stewart by far, right?
Stewart.
Bengals or Ravens defense?
Ravens.
Ravens versus Miami, Bengals versus Philly.
Bengals. Ravens, yeah. Ravens.
Oh, you guys are breaking my heart. Breaking it. I would obviously not go against my Dolphins here. That's a biased opinion.
If you ever have one, yeah.
Yeah. Where did my Roto World tab go? Just wanted to see if there's any last minute news here. I apologize for the typing in your ears. Tom Savage is out today, guys. Big news, right? Devontae Parker is active. Jordan Matthews, we already said, is inactive. Let's see. Quentin Patton is active. Chris Hogan is active. And, yeah. Philip Gaines is inactive. Your boy Philip Gaines, Kev, inactive. What's your guys' favorite matchup for today? Give me a favorite.
There's a lot. I really like this slate.
Boy.
I mean, obviously, I'm a little biased, so I'd probably go Chiefs Falcons.
Well, outside of your favorite, obviously.
Oh, well then Steelers and Giants.
How about you, Ryan? No Steelers, no Bears. Which is your favorite matchup outside of your faves?
Oh, I like the Carolina-Seattle game tonight. Just to see how that one fares.
Carolina, Seattle. I'm actually looking forward to Washington, Arizona. I want to see how Washington bounces back from that tough loss. Unfortunately, guys, that's it. That's all the time we have for today. But the good news is that means the games are starting. So get on over to Red Zone. Get on over to your TV, whatever your weapon of choice is. Get that stuff on. Get your wings. Get your soda. Unless you're on the West Coast, it may be a little too early for that stuff at this point. But here on the East Coast, it's 1 o'clock. It's lunchtime. I got the order ready to go. Guys, thanks so much, man. It was a lot of fun today. Best of luck to your teams, except for you, Ryan. You're going down, buddy.
Oh, let's get it.
It's 1 o'clock. It's lunchtime. Let's get it. Best of luck to the Chiefs. Best of luck to the Bears and to the Steelers and to my Miami Dolphins against the Ravens. Huge playoff implications in that game. We are in Baltimore. I should have tried to get tickets to that. I'm like 4 hours from Baltimore. Bad job by me. I'll do better next time. Guys, check us out Tuesday night for the TFA podcast. No guests this week, I don't believe. Is this the first one where Ben joins us? Or no, Ben's coming next week.
Yes, next week.
Yeah, so we will have a new permanent host. You saw him on the show previously. Ben Cummins will be joining us next week as a permanent member of the show. Really excited to have him on. And I'm sure you'll see Ryan a couple times too. Guys, thanks so much. That is it for the Fantasy Authority Game Day Show. Best of luck to all your teams, your fantasy teams, your real life teams, all the shebang. See you next week.